And right here we're able to see the thickness of his dreads. If you guys remember the beginning stage of his lock journey, you would remember that his dreadlocks were actually quite thick during the beginning stages. And this is something to expect, especially when the hair is going through the locking process, or a lot of people call it the ugly stage. I personally like to call it the locking process, and that's because I don't recommend calling anything on you ugly. But I wanted to take a step back and look at this older photo so you're able to compare it to these newer photos that we're going to be looking at. So right here we're able to see that, of course, he still has the same amount of dreadlocks, but they are appearing a lot more skinny and more well put together. And this just comes with time. That's one thing a lot of people with dreadlocks need to really understand, is that you have to have patience during this entire process. And really, that's the number one thing you can have for dreadlocks, is patience. And I know you guys hear me say it over and over and over again on this channel, but it's really true. If you just give it time, you're going to see how your hair can really be transformed in the way that you want it to be. And that's really how it comes with anything. Time really does solve a lot of things. And we began to see how well put together his dreadlocks actually became. There are so many things to really appreciate about his dreadlocks. I really like how mature his dreadlocks became over time. And what I mean by that is that you hardly see any frizz on the lengths and the tips of his dreadlocks. And that just goes to show that his hair really matured. And another thing I want you guys to really notice is how his hair still has somewhat of a thickness to it. Although it's not as thick as it was when he had the half blonde, half black, but it is still quite thick. And that's one thing to expect if you created thick sections. And I just made a video on this on my main channel, Got to the Great, where I separated all of my dreadlocks to literally double and almost triple the amount of my dreadlocks. But with that being said, your dreadlocks can only mature to the amount of your section. And what I mean by that is, if you have inch by inch sections, that means you're going to have some pretty thick dreadlocks. But if you have quarter inch sections, not only are you going to have some skinny dreadlocks, but you're also going to have a lot more because you're taking up less space per dreadlock. And that just goes hand in hand. If you want a lot of dreadlocks, they're going to be skinnier. If you want less, they're going to be thicker. And vice versa. If you want thicker dreadlocks, you're going to have less dreadlocks. If you want skinnier dreadlocks, you're going to have more dreadlocks. So those are two things to take into consideration. And a lot of people don't recognize that, especially during the beginning stage. And here's a great tip. If you start your dreadlocks too soon, meaning if you start anywhere before your hair being 2 inches long, or even possibly 4 inches long, you're typically going to want to create thicker sections to compensate for the short hair. But if you allow the hair to get in the sweet spot of around 4 to 6 inches, and then start the dreadlocks, you're going to feel more comfortable creating more reasonable sections, which in return you're going to have the amount of dreadlocks that you want and the size of the dreadlocks that you want. Now, one thing I really want to point out about XXXTentacion's dreadlocks and how they matured so well is the hairstyles that he chose to do. And he did this double braid back quite a bit, and I actually did a video on this channel on how to emulate this hairstyle without it being braids, but overall this hairstyle really matures the dreadlocks and allows them to lock up a lot quicker and a lot tighter. And for those who've never braided their dreadlocks before, what it does is not only does it put it in a hairstyle, but it also holds it in position, and it also tightens it down on the length of the dreadlock. With all the dreadlocks being butted up against each other, it allows the hair to lock up a lot quicker and a lot tighter. But you guys, I want to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below, and also I want to hear your biggest